Look at your belly.
I unexpectedly ran into the mother of my ex-husband, whom I divorced 5 years ago. I never wanted to see her again, but here we were.
What a useless daughter-in-law.
After we got married, both my husband and mother-in-law cursed me daily. They were convinced that I was 100% responsible for our childlessness, and my husband made a child with somebody else and eventually divorced me. For me, it is a married life I never want to remember. I thought I'd never see my ex-husband's family again. And since then, I have lived a life that my husband and mother-in-law have never known. As evidence, I now have a baby in my belly. It seems that my ex-mother-in-law has no idea and sees me as an overweight woman. My name is Mary. I have been married to my husband, who is a teacher, for 5 years. We've been living with my in-laws, and for the past few years, my mother-in-law has been pressuring me daily, saying, I want to see the face of a grandson soon. As my husband is the eldest son, my mother-in-law was hoping for a male heir. I also wanted a child as soon as possible, and had undergone medical examinations, but no abnormalities were found. However, my mother-in-law kept bringing up my inability to have children and began to blame me for it. And my husband has chimed in and begun to throw taunts at me. Why did I even get married to you when you can't even bear children? I was worn out, and I didn't even know for whom I was trying to get pregnant anymore. One day, my mother-in-law told me that the couple next door is going to be grandparents soon. While it was a joyous occasion, my chest tightened. Yes, I was terrified, and I couldn't bring myself to look my mother-in-law in the eye properly.
How much longer do you intend to make me wait? Everyone around us is happy because they have grandchildren. Don't bring any more shame on me.
That's right. Don't you feel bad for my mom? Here we go again. Why is it such a shame not to have grandchildren in the first place? Who are the children for? I couldn't bear it any longer. Why am I the only one being blamed? I even underwent some tests, and there is nothing wrong with me. You should get tested too. My husband and mother-in-law became furious. Are you saying that you can't get pregnant because there is something wrong with me? Oh, don't be ridiculous.
What kind of woman are you? When you can't even get pregnant, don't talk back. If you have a problem, then leave.
Why am I the one who's to bear all this blame? Is it really all my fault? I held back my words in tears. Infertility is not solely my problem. Isn't it supposed to be a matter of mutual support and encouragement between spouses? However, my husband refuses to get tested. I felt powerless. I can't do anything. I can't say anything. If I can't get pregnant, is there any point in staying in this house? I'd rather just leave. I cried quietly every night, all alone, so they wouldn't notice. After that, my husband and mother-in-law began to ignore me. Even when we were next to each other, they wouldn't even make eye contact, treating me like air. And they started whispering to each other more frequently. One day, they summoned me. My mother-in-law had a somewhat excited look on her face. I want a divorce. I've decided to be with a woman who can get pregnant. He said it so bluntly that my mind went blank.
I am finally going to be a grandmother. I don't need you anymore. Sign this divorce agreement and get out of here.
My mother-in-law said, shoving the divorce papers in my face. What on earth was happening? My husband had been having an affair with another woman, and she got pregnant. She asked him to marry her, and he decided to do so. My mother-in-law was overjoyed at the prospect of having a grandchild. It didn't seem to even matter to her who the child's mother was. You've been having an affair. But as always, I wasn't allowed to speak. My husband shouted over me, "Shut up. I don't need a woman who can't get pregnant. Get out. Get out right now." The next day, I left the house as if I were being chased out. With that, we also learned that he had no cause for infertility. However, I couldn't stay silent. I demanded alimony for the affair from him through a lawyer and put an end to this painful marriage. I believed that the curtain on this chapter would never open again. But reality doesn't always follow our beliefs. I remained to my ex-mother-in-law. It has been 5 years since then. I remarried and started a new life. And I am pregnant. During my pregnancy, I've been supported by my new partner and filled with happiness. One day, I visited a general hospital for a prenatal checkup. The hospital was more crowded than usual. I finished my checkup at the obstetrics and gynecology department and decided to sit on the sofa in the lobby while waiting for my turn to pay. There were so many people at the lobby, and there was a line at the payment counter. I gazed at my big belly, thinking about the baby.
Oh, it's you. Mary, my ex-daughter-in-law, who was the cause for infertility but took the alimony money anyway.
It was a voice that clung to my ears like an unpleasant memory. I had definitely heard that unpleasant voice before. I felt the blood drain from my face in an instant. When I raised my head, my ex-mother-in-law was standing in front of me.
I came here because my leg hurts, you know? Are you not going to give up your seat for Ronaldo? She was still as snarky as ever.
I silently got up, and my ex-mother-in-law plopped herself down in the chair.
I'm so busy taking care of my granddaughter every day. You seem to have a lot of free time.
We were in a hospital. I couldn't raise my voice. I wanted to handle this situation as calmly as possible. I gave a nod and stood there, but my ex-mother-in-law, oblivious to her surroundings, continued to berate me in her usual confrontational tone. In a situation like this, my ex-mother-in-law would always raise her voice.
What's with that unsightly belly? She laughed mockingly. Getting fat all on your own and enjoying life, huh? Well, someone as greedy as you probably won't ever be able to remarry.
I could feel the stares of people around us. I wished she would stop. We had cut ties, yet why does she have to keep harassing me? I'd reached my limit. I couldn't take it anymore, so I told her that I remarried and was pregnant.
Don't cry sour grapes. It's embarrassing.
She suddenly stood up, pretended to stumble, and tried to punch my belly. I instinctively dodged it, but in doing so, I fell, hitting my hip and knees on the ground. I crouched down right there.
Are you okay?
A man who had been sitting nearby stood up and hurried over to me. Fortunately, I hadn't hit the ground too hard, and the injuries weren't serious, but I was still quite shocked by my ex-mother-in-law's actions. And I felt like I might burst into tears at any moment. When I thanked the man who had spoken to me, he looked at me.
Kick in the past, so he remembered her. You are Mrs. Davis, aren't you? It's been a while, he said.
Davis was the last name of my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. She seemed confused.
How is Tom doing these days? He continued.
He's Mr. Smith, my ex-husband's junior high school teacher, and he is the principal of the school where my ex-husband works now. My ex-husband had been greatly indebted to Mr. Smith when he entered high school, and also when he tried to get a job. Mr. Smith had even given a congratulatory speech at our wedding, and we had met several times after that. He had met my ex-mother-in-law on a few occasions.
After what happened, he really needs to make Maya and his new family happy, Mr. Smith said with a hint of sarcasm.
Mr. Smith was referring to the fact that my ex-husband's lover was none other than the woman who triggered my divorce. My ex-husband had approached a student who was at the school for teaching practice at the time. The name of the student was Maya. Of course, it was not permitted for teachers to have relationships with teacher trainees. However, their relationship escalated, and their actions at the school were blatantly obvious to everyone. Mr. Smith couldn't stand to see it, and he had tried to advise my ex-husband, but he wouldn't listen and eventually ended up impregnating Maya. Normally, my ex-husband should have been transferred to a different school, but thanks to Mr. Smith's intervention, he managed to stay at his current school. The shocking revelation from Mr. Smith was something neither my ex-mother-in-law nor it had heard before. My ex-mother-in-law was in shock and stood there frozen, with an expression I had never seen on her face before. It seemed that my ex-mother-in-law finally recalled Mr. Smith.
Oh, I see. Tom probably didn't tell you how his relationship with Maya started. Mr. Smith continued.
Back when I was going through my divorce, I knew my ex-husband's lover was a younger woman, but at the time, I had no interest in her beyond that. I was just shocked when they told me that I was the cause of our infertility. Others to me over. I was exhausted at the time since he divorced me as if he was kidding. To be honest, I don't remember much about what my lawyer said. I just wanted to get through it as quickly as possible and receive alimony to sustain myself. That was all that mattered to me back then. At the time, it became a significant issue within the school because he had been involved with a teacher trainee. Tom finally seemed to realize the gravity of the situation and was very afraid of the consequences he might face. My ex-husband apparently pleaded with Mr. Smith to allow him to stay at the school. He was a man who was very proud of himself. He couldn't have possibly told my ex-mother-in-law about this. Mrs. Davis, you have a grandchild, don't you? You mustn't do such a thing to a pregnant woman. It seemed that Mr. Smith has been observing our exchange and couldn't stay silent any longer. At our school, we don't teach violence. But shouldn't either. Stop this disgraceful behavior, and as a mother and a grandmother, please teach them to cherish a child, a life. My ex-mother-in-law looked pale, and her mouth moved, but no words came out, having been informed of her son's misdeeds by her son's former teacher, and being seen while trying to harm a pregnant woman. My ex-mother-in-law couldn't bear to stay and hastily left. I thanked Mr. Smith repeatedly. If you ever have any trouble, please don't hesitate to ask me. I have one concern as well, he said and handed me his business card. One concern? Mr. Smith's expression darkened slightly, but I didn't pay much attention. More than that, I was relieved to have been freed from my ex-mother-in-law and felt as if I gained a strong ally. After that, a few months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy and returned to my parents' home. My husband visited on weekends and actively helped with taking care of the baby. Although I faced many challenges as a first-time parent, I cherished my little son and I was filled with happiness every day. One day, my phone rang while I was holding my son. I switched to speakerphone and answered the call. But to my surprise, the caller was my ex-mother-in-law who had somehow heard that I had given birth to a baby boy. "I heard that you had a boy," was her first comment over the phone. Don't people usually say congratulations? My new daughter-in-law is useless since she only has a daughter.
Since she only has a daughter. Besides, she makes me take care of her child all the time. I wonder if young daughters-in-law these days are all like this.
Which don't matter to me, she suddenly said.
If you are able to get pregnant, why don't you make an heir for our family? You can borrow my son.
She said something unbelievable like that. Then, just as I was about to speak up, my mother, who was sitting next to me, erupted in anger. My mother, who was sitting next to me, erupted in anger. It's only natural. How uncouth can you be? Stop bothering your daughter. Don't call her ever again. My ex-mother-in-law was surprised that other people were listening in and quickly hung up. But I was afraid of my ex-mother-in-law, who was following me everywhere. I felt genuinely threatened. My husband felt the same and thought he couldn't leave me alone. So, through the lawyer I had hired for the divorce, I told my ex-mother-in-law and ex-husband to cut all ties with me and warn them not to contact me ever again. A few months later, Mr. Smith contacted me. It seemed that my ex-husband's family was in turmoil. He wanted to ensure that the sparks from their issues didn't affect me, and it turned out that his concern was right on the mark. Their daughter wasn't actually my ex-husband's child. Mia had a boyfriend from the university she was attending at that time. She was in a relationship with my ex-husband while hiding that. One day, she got pregnant by her boyfriend. However, since her boyfriend was a university student without much financial means, they couldn't get married, so she lied and claimed that the child was my ex-husband's. My ex-husband, who hadn't been blessed with children with me, was easily deceived and ended up marrying Maya. At this point, Mr. Smith was thinking that the father of the baby in Maya's belly might not be Tom. Now, the biological father of Maya's daughter had appeared and demanded to return his daughter to him. As my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law were confused, Maya told them the truth. When my ex-mother-in-law, who had been deceived and had been taking care of the girl, learned the truth, she lost her temper. She hurled hurtful words at Maya, argued with her, and even began to lie, and even began to rampage with a knife. Maya was frightened and contacted the police. Subsequently, my ex-husband and Maya divorced. Mia left with her daughter to live with her daughter's real father, but for financial reasons, they seemed to fight every day. Her dream of becoming a teacher had faded over time. My ex-mother-in-law, who now knows, became a completely different person, muttering to herself while visiting the park every day, observing children playing gleefully with an eerie smile. As a result, she had been taken into police custody several times. His affair with the former teacher trainee and the incident involving his mother at the hospital had come to light. He eventually lost his teaching position and resigned from his career as a teacher. The pride that came from having been a teacher made it challenging for him to find a new job. His savings quickly depleted, and he began to lead a miserable life with his mentally unstable mother. The house deteriorated into a state of disarray and soon became like a hoarder's house. One day, my phone rang. It was for my ex-husband. "I apologize for everything. I can't go on without you. Theory, will you come back?" he said in a weak voice. However, there was no sympathy left in me. He and his mother make me suffer so much. I hope that they go to hell. Don't be ridiculous. I don't need a man who can't make a baby. Don't ever call me again. With that, I hung up. From that moment on, I never saw my ex-husband or ex-mother-in-law again. According to rumors, they were being treated as nuisances by the neighbors due to the stench and pest problems emanating from their deteriorating home. But I have nothing to do with it. I have a precious family now. I have a mother who cares about me the most, a husband who puts our family first, and the most adorable son in the world. Although I make mistakes while taking care of my child, since I'm still not used to it, and I can't change diapers efficiently, my husband and I cooperate and live, smiling every day. I have a smile on my face now. I could hear my son's cries from the next room. He's just woken up from his nap. He must be hungry. It's time to change his diaper, feed him, and change his clothes if he has sweat. This is how my days have passed peacefully until now, and this is how my days will pass peacefully from now on.